Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to Speed Tips by Bob and Chad. We've got Chad Weirs with us again today, and of course, I'm Bob Harris, and our special guest is Kurt Spalding from All Star Performance. So, how are you guys doing today?
Good.
Good. Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Well, Kurt, let's start with you and kind of tell us, you're from All Star Performance, and tell us a little bit about All Star Performance and what you do.
It's a little bit about All Stars. We've been around for 30 years. We've got lots and lots of products. Um, Pretty much known for the circle track area, but have a lot of other items that touch, drag racing and street performance and off road, and lots of other categories of items. And um, basically, we sell parts around the world to our dealers, and we're big advocates of supporting the trackside, vendors, the speed shops, the chassis builders. That's our focus for our business. Obviously, it ends up at the racers, but we really try to make sure that we keep people racing on Saturday nights, and just do whatever we can to support them and help out the whole system, I guess.
Sure. So now, do people buy your products from the dealers, or can they buy it direct from All Star Performance?
They can, but we go out of our way to try to get people in touch with a dealer, and sometimes they don't want to deal with a dealer that's in their area. But like if they contact us through the website, I mean they can buy there. But what we do is we try to give them the two closest dealers, and sometimes they'll just say, hey, I don't want to buy close, and we'll to a dealer close by. So we'll go a state away, or we'll look outside of their area to try to help them. It's advantageous to deal through those people because they know your rules better. They know the situation. They know the people, the economy. They just know all those things. And, we feel, we do a good job of making sure we keep them inventoried up and have the right stuff. And so we do a lot of work behind the scenes trying to take care of them that way.
Awesome. That's well, I know we purchase a fair amount of stuff from All Star, and we
Yep.
appreciate the service and the quality of stuff that you guys send has been good, and you can always count on it being there in 2 days, and so that's pretty cool. Um,
Most would be happy to have it in 2 days. There's a lot that can't get it in 2 days, but and you touched on something. Do we have the highest quality of everything? No, we can't, because we try to keep stuff affordable and keep it in the price ranges to make everything work. And it seems to work at all levels, just to have. So some of the stuff isn't real earth shattering that we have, but we try to, over the years, we've just try to fill voids, fill areas. So sometimes we'll add something and people think it's kind of quirky, but if we've got dealers asking for it because they've struggled to buy that stuff, we add those things to try to help them out. Needless to say, it ends up going to lots of other dealers. So, and Chad, you and I've talked about this. I mean, we've dealt with each other for 30 years. I mean, sometimes it's just about making something a little bit simpler, or just putting it in front of them a different way. So it's not always about the latest greatest widget. It's just taking care of people.
Exactly. You hit on something there with the dealers. Those small speed shops is vital to the industry because if they're going to order one part from you and pay shipping, they can go to their local speed stop or speed shop and pick 3 or 4 items up and not pay shipping. So that's one thing that the end user needs to think about too, is try to help that local speed shop out instead of doing direct to the brand or whatever, and try to keep them in business, especially in these times. They need everything they can get. So definitely got to keep them local guys going for sure.
And you hit on a key thing. I get asked all the time, how do I keep coming up with, and it's not me, it's my team, it's our dealers. We're listening to everybody, but I seem to get credit for that. But I think it's because I came from an area where we didn't have a lot of speed shops. We didn't have a lot of options. So with that focus, we want to make sure people, not everybody has, a good outlet that's close by. Sometimes it is, where you have to, can you imagine if you had no dealers and you had to ship everything and it took 3 and 4 days? I mean, most racers can't plan tomorrow, let alone to be thinking that far out. So we just try to take care of the dealers as best as we can.
You got it. So let's touch on your racing background is fairly deep. You've raced a pavement asphalt car, and now you're running a dirt modified. Touch a little bit on your racing experience, Kurt.
Has wheels, will race. I mean, I can just kind of come from a racing family, and I started off road racing, which most people don't know, and that's just what we did to have fun, and then dabbled in some dirt racing stuff. Moved to Michigan. I'm from Pennsylvania originally. Moved Michigan way and raced some asphalt stuff, and bounced back and forth several different times. There was even years where I'd run dirt stuff on Friday nights and asphalt on Saturday because I could make it work and the tracks were close enough. And I tie it all into my work. So today, what I like doing racing is traveling more and tying that dealer back in, so I can go to a track in Illinois or Florida or wherever. I can put together on a limited schedule to travel like that and just go visit these places and have fun and get to race different areas with different people and try to take in new tracks every year. So that's kind of it on the race side. Pretty fortunate. We're in an area where we can race. Sanctioned bodies are kind of becoming an issue again, where the overlap isn't there. I don't have the options that I once had, but just between IMCA's coming back in, which is a good thing. But that's not what I race. So I've got to go south to run the UMP stuff, and I don't race any asphalt stuff anymore. That just, as Chad can attest, the long hours you're at the track at 10 in the morning and you don't get home till 1 in the morning. I mean, it's just, and when kids start playing a factor and things like that all adds up. So have a good time. Just race wherever we can.
Well, we were in that pavement stuff with Brett Moffitt. That was just grueling days, and you'd be there for days, and it's just like, man, it was fun. I mean, I wouldn't give it up. I mean, I learned a lot. I had a lot of fun. I got to see a lot of cool places, and that part was cool. But boy, you'd leave on Wednesday and you get home on Sunday, and it's just got to be kind of old after a while.
We can do that. We can do it on the dirt and race every single night.
Well, that's the thing. You drive 35 to 40 miles or whatever. So, yeah, that's definitely better. So what's new and exciting at Weir's Machine?
Just plugging away. A lot of people think March Madness is basketball, but in the racing industry, that's the month before the race season starts. So that's what we call it here, is March Madness. So
yes,
definitely busy.
Awesome. Well, our first question, we got, hello guys. What's the advantage or disadvantages are there to running your pull bar flat or even slightly uphill on the frame, or traveling the pull bar up to 1 3/4 inches? And lastly, is there anywhere for you guys to get a weekly maintenance checklist or cheat sheet? I have one. And if you could somehow or another get me your email address, I could sure send you the one that we have for our school, and a couple other pieces of paper that are pretty useful for weekly maintenance and stuff like that. The advantages of running the pull bar flatter, I don't know, 1 3/4 inches travel kind of depends on what you're actually racing. If you're running a UMP car, that 1 3/4 inches is probably pretty accurate. If you're running an IMCA car, it's probably a little much. The IMCA stuff likes 1 1/4 inches, a little better, and I think you guys in the UMP world or the open world is 1 3/4 inches to 2 inches, if I'm not correct. Is that correct, Kurt?
It's all over the place. Personally, I don't run that much travel, but it's pretty common to be anywhere, like you say, from that 1 1/4 inches to 2 inches.
Okay. The slightly uphill, I just like running a 15 degrees angle. The closer you get it to the rear end, the stiffer your system needs to be. And sometimes I think that gives you quick traction, but I don't know if it gives you the traction length as far as where the having a little more angle and up a little bit higher. I think gives the car good traction instantly, but it lasts longer.
That question, Bob, is Tim Nash, that old number 7 garage. He's got a YouTube channel, so if you're bored some night, go watch that old number 7 garage. He has some pretty cool videos about building the car. He dug a car out of the weeds, and that's what they're working on right now. So it's good TV
Awesome.
if you need something to watch.
Well, I'm always in the mood for something to watch because CBS has kind of been a little lazy here lately. So yeah, no problem. Chad had a buddy looking for your spring table diagram. Wants to know where he could find that.
If you send an email to weirsmachine@gmail.com, we can get that taken care of tomorrow. I think we were going to put it on ultraforcetech.com, but I don't know if them are up there yet in the tech documents. So, but I'm not sure they're online. So if you email me, we'll get that to you tomorrow.
Larry picked up some gearboxes from his local dealer, All-Star Gearboxes. Way to go, Larry. Larry also wants to know the tire stagger for an A-mod. Well, yeah, I'm pretty sure Larry runs an IMCA car. We always start with 1 inch in the front and 2 inches in the back. And then in the rear kind of varies anywhere between 1 inch and 2.5 inches. It just depends on the track condition, and a lot of it has to do with the driver too. Some guys like to run more stagger and they just like the feel of more stagger. Kind of depends on the racetrack. If you've got a more of a sweeping corner, sometimes you might not need as much stagger. If you've got a tighter corner, you might need a little more stagger to let that roll through the middle. It just kind of all depends. Let's see. Brian Rorick wants to tell us that he's watched you race Kurt for a long time. Brian Jennings, his closest speed shop is 2.5 hours away. Brian also wants to know, Kurt, do you have any interest in running an IMCA modified?
In the right situation, sure. I mean, to the previous comment, has wheels and tires and will race. Yeah, it's got to be the right stuff and the right place. I mean, would I unload and go to the Hope race and not test and practice? Heck no, or do that at Boone? No, you gotta. But yeah, for sure. I actually had a conversation interview deal with IMCA last week because we have some programs and stuff with them, and great people and stuff there, and they let me know that I was like 301st on the list. So anytime I can get in a car and better from a number like that, we'll definitely do it.
Yeah, I see. Doug wants to know, he's putting a new rear end in a sport mod. What do you recommend for pull bar placement? Notice that some cars are going behind center line. And also, what direction do you want the toe of the lower 3-link bars? Learned a lot watching over the years. I always, on our sport mod stuff, we run at 1 inch behind center on the pull bar. It's a solid bar, but the thing is, I like the behind center on that solid bar just because you get a lot of roll steer and that thing actually moves around quite a bit. And I just as soon always have it moving around, without changing a lot of angle. So, if you started too far back or too far forward, it can kind of get to the point where it starts changing a lot of angles. So I like that pretty well. Rear end, the 3-link bars, I've always, as a rule of thumb, I've always towed my left bar in 2 inches. So like if I'm standing behind the car and I'm looking forward, I see, I angle the left one 2 inches and I angle the right one 1 inch. Can't really tell you why I specifically do that. I did that years and years ago, and it worked well, and I've been doing it ever since. I always kind of wanted to angle that left bar more towards the right front, and the right bar not so much towards the left front and more in the center of the car. And so that's kind of what we came up with. Eric, with the tire crunch nationwide, what's your tire prep tips to get some tires with some laps and age on them? Still good tread to be competitive again. Yeah, I'm not super great on tires, but just buffing them tires, and you got to be a little careful on the tire prep stuff. Just cleaning them real good with a non-greasable soap, and then lightly grinding them so that they're fresh would be my suggestion. What's your opinion, Kurt?
For sure. People vary on what they um, decide is clean, and obviously we all look at tires all the time, and to the novice eye they look clean because the outside's black. Well, if you're cleaning your tire, and obviously the most important thing to do is get them cleaned very quick. So if you're racing on Saturday night, that's one of the first things you need to do Sunday morning. And when you're, soap and water works. And I use a steam Jenny. I like to have hot water, but not scalding hot water. And when you're done cleaning them, you can't see any of the dirt down into the grooves, and your whole tire just looks nice and clean. And then of course wrap it or put something on it just so the air, doesn't work on it all week. Definitely don't roll them around the shop. Things like that, just simple little things to keep them clean all week will help you a bunch. The guys that clean their tires on Thursday and go race on Friday, you can pretty much tell that that's what they're doing. And if they look at their tires close, they can, tell a big difference there.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, if that tire's been exposed to the elements for a period of time, it's going to be difficult to bring it back. You can work on it a little bit, but it's going to be hard.
There,
go ahead.
There's I don't know how it's your guys' way, but in the Midwest, a lot of the tracks, everybody talks about tires soaking different chemicals that way, but these tracks use different chemicals, and you can see it, you can smell it, you can see it on your tire. We don't know what they're using, but you can tell something else is going on. So there's another reason to get your stuff cleaned quick and get it, just keep it looking new.
Yeah, you got to get that stuff off there before it affects the actual rubber in the tire.
Yep.
Ryan's got a question of opinion for us. I'm looking to go from an open trailer to an enclosed trailer. What's the minimum length trailer you guys would go racing an A-mod? That just all depends on how much stuff you want to stick in there, man. How big a truck do you have? 24-foot trailer used to be the thing, but anymore, you can't even find a used 24-footer because everything's 26, 28. Most everything's about 28 now. So, like I said, you'd have to answer that question on your own, just depending on if you want to put a pit cart in there, if you're wanting to plan to put a four-wheeler in there. You just have to kind of look at what your needs are. Larry says he's got a big racing weekend coming up in Tennessee. Well, good luck for racing down there, and hopefully it all works good. Old number 7 garage was a UMP modified. Jason, can I get those documents as well? So I'm assuming Jason's wanting those documents, Chad.
Yeah.
I got a comment back to that. I was thinking about after the first time it got asked. Obviously you're going to fix whatever stuff gets wrecked and damaged. I tell a lot of people to pick a corner, and you're not going to, most guys are not going to do professional level. They're going to pull hubs off and they're going to go that far. But a weekly guy just doesn't have the time. He's working and he can't go that far. So pick a corner each week that you work on. So just start at that right front, go to the right rear, go to the left rear. And obviously in a month, now you've worked your way around the race car, and pay attention to little things. You need to torque as much stuff as you can. All the time on brakes. Bennett Afco, we just had this conversation. Torque your rotor bolts, because when something's happening and it comes loose, if you torque it, well, then you better be looking at why it came loose. But if you just torque things by hand, you have no way of knowing what the cause was. So the more items that you can torque and know, your rear end, quick, everybody's running, not everybody, but a lot of quick change and stuff into play now. And I mean, I've seen them where guys come bring them in the shop and it's like, holy cow, no wonder there's fluid leaking out of them. You got to torque that stuff on a regular basis. And once you're torquing and then you don't have anything like on that rear end loose, well, then you've found that happy spot. So a couple other areas of that maintenance, guys neglect their radiators. The three of us just had a conversation on that, a week ago. People don't, when it hits June or July, put a new radiator in your car. They start fighting cooling problems, but you got to maintenance that stuff. Same with a fan. I mean, I put 3 and 4 fan blades on my car throughout the year. That's based on racing 40 times, but that's just to get that maintenance in there where you got fresh stuff. So sometimes you just got to pick where you want to do those things and in which month and make a plan for it.
Jason's got a question here for Chad. What spring cups do you recommend for the rear of a street stock? 5-inch spring on a metric chassis, swivel on the jack bolt, or rear end housing?
I would run our OD grab swivel cups on the top. Some guys do put them on the rear end side. You just want to make sure you don't have bearings on both sides. Otherwise the spring will just pop to one direction and bowl really bad. So I'd run the bearings on the top with rigid cups on the axle, and I'd use the OD stuff with the Torrington bearings if your rules allow, and as long as you stay in tension on the spring, and that'd be a pretty good package for that.
Garrett's asking a question. What do you recommend for left rear chain length on a Wasota B mod? Anyway, it kind of depends on how much movement you're getting, but those cars probably a 4-inch drop is probably pretty standard. That's probably where I would start. The actual length I really couldn't tell you because it depends on where you're mounting it to and how you're actually mounting it. The left rear, I definitely would mount on the rear end. I would mount it inboard so that it doesn't have it doesn't affect the left rear traction as much. But I would say, I would jack it up and I would try to get about 4 inches of drop and see where your trailing arms are. Because, of course, with Soda, you can't have a lot of angle in your trailing arms, or you have to have equal angle on both sides. So you might actually, with that rule, you might actually want to run a little more drop. Kind of just depends on the situation. Jason called Ding. He's a dealer. All right, Ryan, thanks for getting Jason that information. David, UMP Open Modified. Left rear brake floater recommendations for starting points on length, height on the rear's cage.
So I would probably be 1 hole below your 4-link rod, and our brake floater is automatically built back an inch from center line to keep it from camming over. But that's something you're going to want to look at through motion, hanging on the chain, to make sure you're not going to cam it over. So I don't know what the length would be, but you'd have to take a measurement on your car, and always keep in mind that when you're hanging on the chain and you got the right rear tucked up, that thing's going to travel farther on the racetrack under the braking force than it does in the shop. So, and it doesn't matter where that caliper is. So always err on the side of caution, put a little bit longer bar on there, so that you don't cam it over. Because once you cam it over, your night's ruined and you'll have to start from scratch there.
Our old buddy Uncle Pat Fagan wants to know 3 of the greatest industries that's going to save racing. Great to see you, Kurt, being involved. Next question is some kid by the name of Bobby wants to know, question for Bob, can we go fishing tomorrow? Kid's always a comedian. Dan Patch, I want to thank Chad for the grease tube pusher. I buy empty caulk tubes off of Amazon and use this tool to transfer the grease from the cartridge into the caulking tubes. Now that my caulking gun is a grease gun, it keeps the grease clean and I can put it in tight spots and don't have to worry about bristles from a brush getting into the grease. Well, good to know, Pat. I'm quite sure Chad will appreciate that.
Yeah, the grease tube pushers have been around for quite a while. That's a Kevin Noodleman idea from back in the day. When we used to pack wheel bearings wrong when I was a kid, when they first taught me, put a big mound of that stuff in your hand and then you pack it completely full. We don't do that anymore, but that's how we used to do it back in the day.
Yeah, that's
The
more
grease
grease on
tube,
my hands
the
than I'd
grease
like
tube,
to do.
grease tube pusher is definitely a cool tool. Helps you push that grease out, keep it clean.
Yep, no doubt. USRA BMOD open motor. Bob, you have said changing the left front shock at the first adjustment at the racetrack. What do you go for if it slicks off a lot? More or less rebound, compression, or bleed? Um, well, we actually do two things on that situation. Of course, you guys, USRA, you cannot run a short shaft shock. That would be the ideal situation. Kind of depends on how your driving style is. I tend to maybe soften up the rebound a little bit and stiffen up the compression on my left front shock for a slick racetrack. I like it to a little stiffer compression helps keep the right rear a little tighter getting into the corner. A little softer compression or softer rebound kind of helps the car get on the right rear a little bit quicker. Giving you a little bit more side bite most of the time. Now, I don't go a lot. We're talking about a 5 on compression and a 4 on rebound. Not a huge split, but our regular standard left front shock is a 4-5, and we just switch it around. Old number 7 garage wants me to bring popcorn. Well, no problem. I'll do that. I'll make sure to bring popcorn. In fact, I think I got some fresh popcorn around here somewhere. That was yesterday's events. Once we figured out our right front travel, how much would you like to see on a bump stop compressed? Now, I know there's a big difference in the hardness and softness, and maybe you can reflect on that as well. I'm not. My son actually has more knowledge on the bump stop thing because he works with some 3MP customers and some other people that I'm going to have to lean on you, Kurt, on that one, or Chad.
Well, we could talk all night probably, but it really depends on what you like or what your feel is. I mean, it seems like, and you hit it. It depends on what you're running in there for the hardness or softness of your bumps. All that is, they're all huge things, not little things. And until you're used to running on them, you got to I think you got to work up into that. If you're a driver that's tuning yourself, if you've got a chassis builder or somebody that's getting you a pretty good starting point, well, that changes that. But like I wasn't a big bump fan for a long time until I got the right feel that I liked, and then it was like, okay, now I know where I need to get back to, and it's tricky. I mean, a 16th packer is a big deal when you're close on that stuff. So once you get where you're liking that feel, you just got to keep fine tuning and keep fresh stuff in there. You think about it, here we are smashing that thing how many times, especially if the track is rough and you're bumped more than you should be, you're probably ruined that stuff in one night's time. So same thing happens on the pull bar like that. And guys forget because they say, I just freshened up my pull bar. Well, yeah, but if you went to an off-road track, you used up all your new fresh bushings, or whatever style you're running, you use that stuff up pretty quick. So it's a tricky question.
Yeah, even the right front. I mean, if you have a perfect bump stop package and then you get a hole in the track, you're going to destroy that thing every time you go through that hole, and that's a one night consumable, probably. I would say most of the time, right?
More often than not.
It looks like it'd be a consumable deal. What are ways to get more drive speed on exit on a dry racetrack, and should you change gears? Well, it's kind of a in-depth question there, Ronnie. Drive is always a struggle. But one thing about it, and we talked about this, the three of us talked about this a week ago out in New York when we did the Race Tech Info School out there. Um, Corner entry is such a key factor to corner exit, and especially on dry slick. The biggest problem on dry slick that people do is they tighten their cars up too much. And then all of a sudden the car goes in and it kind of has to scrub traction a little bit. Well, with some of these hard tires, once you scrub traction, you're just going to have to wait till you get it back. Where if you can let the car kind of roll in on its own and roll through the middle and ease off the throttle, you'd be surprised at how much speed you'll actually get. You're not going to get any more traction. It's just a driving style thing. Changing gears, I've heard all kinds of ways. Some guys will put a gear in there that gets you a whole bunch of straightaway speed. I think that gear maybe can be a little bit more difficult to drive on a slick racetrack. So sometimes guys, put a gear in there to turn the motor a little harder and keep the RPM range up. I think that's a driver deal, in my opinion. I think it just all depends on what the driver feels most comfortable with. I've seen both ways be very successful, and I tend to like that straightaway speed thing more so than not. How about you, Kurt?
So this is an advantage of my job where I get to talk to a lot of professional racers and stuff. And I was at a big track and I hadn't been there before and stuff was changing real fast. And like the lap times slowed down like seconds, not 2/10, but like a second and a half it slowed down. So I'm talking and he said, well, how much did the track slow down? And I told him and he's like, why don't you just slow down? So you think about it, sometimes you just can't keep driving full tilt all the time. Bob, you touch on it, not touch on it. You get in depth on it in your schools about your phase 2 of the corner. Well, that's a case, when it's dry slick, you just have to be fast through the center and it's going to help your exit. So you're going to take care of that problem by being smooth and not having your car too tight and knotted up and those sorts of things in the center of the corner.
Okay. Patch spinner on a Lasota B-Mod. What would be the pros and cons of spring on a swing arm or on a bird cage? Well, the swing arm car is going to drive great. They don't have the traction and keep in mind you're dealing with usually a 60-40 ratio. So when you put something on a swing arm, like if you have a 200-pound right rear, you're going to probably need a 300-pound spring on that trailing arm. So it doesn't load the rear end as well. If there's traction in the racetrack, there's nothing faster. If there's any kind of traction, that swing arm car is the nicest driving thing you ever drive. As far as, it's like a good old leaf spring car almost. It's just traction wise, I would think you'd be better on a cage myself. Another one of our good buddies. We want our good buddy Rex Merritt. When are you going to go back to Kalamazoo so we can get another world speed record, Kurt?
Hello, Rex, and thanks for chiming in. The short answer is definitely no. So we did that, and we had a lot of fun, and we made sure the cooler was empty at the end of the night. All things I'm sure you're proud of. The first year we went, we had a really good time. All was good. The second year we got a little more serious, and we broke the record again. We're pretty fortunate that we survived that deal. We had stuff break and bend and cracks and things like the board itself and structurally. I put some safety stuff in it for the second year. None of these cars are made to do what we were doing, so we were just way outside of our element. And people think it's cool. It still comes up all the time. And congrats to Andy Bozell. He's broke that record since, and he owns that. The track was smart enough to stop having that event because things got that far out of hand. And yeah, that day's behind us, and we're glad that nobody got hurt. So.
Tell them how fast. What was the record? I don't remember now.
So my fastest was right at 10 seconds, just shy of getting into the 9-second bracket at Kalamazoo. So a 3/8 mile track, and so what happened?
Wow.
What made it neat? The first year, both years I did it with the same car. It was a master-built dirt late model car that we took to the asphalt track. We did it on a whim. I mean, the tracks who wanted us to come try this. I raced Eldora that Sunday, put a board on the thing, and showed up Friday, that weekend at Kalamazoo. After those first couple of years, it started getting. Randy said it. He thought it was pretty cool that we broke the record because it was 25 years old. But he also put some money into trying to help break the record back. So it meant enough to him that he wanted the record. But purpose-built stuff. I mean, I literally took a car off the track and went and did this at the end. And I'm not taking anything away. I mean, everybody wants to go fast, so you do what you got to do. But different injection motors versus carb, just different things played into this, and purpose-built, parts and things. And again, not playing it down. The whole thing was awesome and great exposure for all of short track in a lot of different ways. But I'll rank that in the not very smart category either. So
Is that video on?
What's that?
Video on YouTube? Is the video on YouTube?
Yeah, I'm sure it's still out there. Yeah. It doesn't look right, and it's not right. So
you're saying you were younger then?
I was a couple days younger. Yep.
Yeah.
I didn't have the grandkids. Yeah, I didn't. I was a whole different age bracket at that point. So
I can understand.
Yep.
Matthew wants to know how much lead is too much mounted on the rear end for a USRA 3-link B-mod. I don't know. I never go past 5/8 of an inch. I know there's guys out there that are running 3/4. I've even had some guys that run as much as an inch. In my opinion, if you have to run more than a half an inch to 5/8 or even a half an inch, there's chassis adjustments that you need to make because, and it depends. If you're getting a lot of, and this goes back to that rear steer thing, if you're getting a lot of rear steer and with a USRA car, you can run quite a bit of left rear angle, and you get that left rear angle so that it's dynamic is about 45 degrees. That rear end is going to crawl ahead 3 inches. So, you might have to put half inch, 5/8 of an inch, or 3/4 of an inch just to compensate for the lead. But if you're not getting that much movement, I still believe that maybe more moderation, it's just better. Jason, break. Hang on, Jason, I got to move my mouse.
I think he was talking about lead on the rear end, Bob. How much lead on the rear end?
Oh, lead on the rear end, not lead. Duh.
We covered lead now. Now we can talk about lead.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. How much is too much? Oh, yeah. Good. I'm glad you read that right. I read it the way I wanted to read it. Heck, I don't know. 50 pounds, I would think, would be plenty.
Yeah, I mean, lead is load. Load is traction, right? So the more the merrier until you get to a rough track. Then you're going to wish you hadn't put it on. That's why when the whole heavy trend started and we had the axle clamp was really the best option because you could put it on when the track was baby smooth and get the extra grip, and when it was rough and choppy and nasty, you could take it off and have your light rear end again. So I would say that there's guys still putting probably 40 or 50 pounds on the left rear. Kurt, are you playing with any of that heavy stuff? Or?
Yeah, I've been all over the place, and you touched on it. I mean, that you can't really answer that question because there's so many track conditions that play a factor. So if you're like we can add lead that way, but if they can, then they should be because it definitely change your race car.
But it definitely has to be smooth. Jason wants to know brake spacers are necessary with stock type metric calipers with an 810 rotor. I would highly recommend a brake spacer because then you keep the piston inside the caliper more, and I think that's just a better brake system. Ryan wants to know any new products in test or development or opportunities to become a test dummy. Well, Ryan, you have to get on the list because we got a lot of test dummies. And no offense, but sometimes I'm not so sure that's not the case in certain situations. But we don't. I don't do a lot of testing, and I'm pretty picky about the drivers that I got to have a real good relationship with the driver to test products. Um, Jake McBurney's kind of been our test guy for the last couple of years. We kind of know his driving style well, know his race car well, so we can, because a lot of guys aren't really that interested in trying new stuff either, because they're out there to race for a win, and most generally, if we put something that is a test product on there, we believe it's going to be better, but we don't always hit a home run every time, and so the guy that you're testing with has to be willing to sacrifice a little bit too. So I think Matthew is talking about weight bolt of the rear end. Yep, Kevin, I got that. Chad squared me up on that one. Paul, hey Bob, do you have any experience or thoughts on that Swift tight helix rear spring? I don't myself have a lot of experience with it. I know a lot of stock car guys like that spring. What I have found is kind of a general comment that people that have run that spring also kind of sometimes say that they lose a little bit of right rear feel, which there's a possibility that you could. The only thing of it is a 200-pound spring or a 225-pound spring is still a 225-pound spring, no matter how many helixes or how many coils are in it. So I'm not, I'm not really sure I can be the greatest speaker on that particular product because I know guys that have run it in a modified complain about they lose a little bit of right rear feel. Kyle, Dark Horse is the Weir's test dummy, Ryan.
You missed Gary.
I did.
Yeah.
Okay. Hang on a second.
He wants to know if the new Willwood spindles are as good or better than the Argo spindles.
Wildwood. Well, I don't know. The Argo stuff is pretty good. We haven't had any problem with their stuff that we use. Now, keep in mind, we're mostly in the IMCA world, so we've kind of got to have a stamped IMCA stamped spindle, so we can't use the open Argo spindles like we used to could. Okay. When bolting lead on the axle tube for a smooth, slick racetrack, are you doing anything different to the car to compensate? Not to my knowledge.
Well, I would say that if you're gonna put 50 pounds on the left rear, you might want to take it off the frame rail so you don't increase that much left side percent.
Right. True. Yeah.
I don't. That's what a lot of guys say. I put all that weight on the left rear and then I was free in. Well, definitely gonna, depending on how much you put on the axle on the left rear, you're gonna make the car unbalanced and make it dominate that left rear tire on entry and make it freeze. So if you put 20 pounds on both sides, you're probably going to be a neutral effect. If you just pile it on the left rear, it's going to be free in. Is that what you experienced, Kurt?
Absolutely. If you put it on and you're thinking that that's a miracle fix, it's not. You got to put it on and then go back to tuning stuff around it. So for sure, first time you put it on, you're free in, and guys can't get it off quick enough. Well, they didn't even give it a chance.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd probably have to put more panhard bar in it and do some things to try to tighten the car up, because once you load that left rear tire, it's going to have more load on it side force wise than that right rear tire, and you're going to have that problem. Ryan wants to know if we was able to buy the stock car school online. It was a couple weeks ago and watch it. Yeah, Ryan, just go to you can go to bobharrisent.com, click under the school tab there, and it'll lead you right to where you need to be. Another Ryan, hey, we figured out what the case, but I'd rather be told no than to have ever asked. Did I read that correctly?
That was the test driver.
Oh, that's yeah.
I'm out on the next question.
What's the most droop you've seen working in A-mod, Bob? Jake.
Well, I've seen some guys have a lot of droop. I can't say that I've seen it work, but I've seen some guys have a lot of droop. 5 inches is going to be stretching it, and it depends on how you measure it. But you get too much droop in there. Once again, you get too much roll steer, and you're trying to put angle in your trailing arms to get your traction, but then you're putting steer in the car, which is going to free you up, and so you're kind of sometimes what you do, you undid. I mean, there's an opposite and equal reaction to everything you do, and so you got to look at it from that perspective.
That definitely is a package thing. It's very similar to the previous question on the lead. If you're going to decide to go there, you can make it work, but you better be checking interference of all your parts and pieces, and from the drive shaft to the to the U-bolts and stuff on the quick change to all everything through the whole travel. There's advantages, but you got to work at it. It's not something you just add and say, hey, this is going to be a cure-all. It takes quite a while to get there, and sometimes you don't see as big a result. I don't know what you've seen there, Chad, but it definitely is a package. It's not something you're going to do overnight.
Yeah, I mean, you got so many variables to look at. You touch the drive shaft, and he'll sell you another one when you wreck the one you got in there, when you put an extra inch of chain in there. Camming over the brake floater we were talking about, camming over the suspension cage. It's definitely hard on stuff, and I'd say if you're gonna get crazy with droop, you almost need to be zero indexed anyway. So a lot of variables there. It's not just like you said, magical dust, let an inch of chain out, and you're gonna go win the feature, because your chances are you're gonna wreck something there.
Usually guys, when they're trying to go there, if they just study what they're doing and make sure those same things are free and everything's moving, and there's a lot of maintenance right there. And if you're not on top of that, it throws everything else off, because that one little bind, goes through the whole car. So
Yeah, no doubt. Very good points. Question, Scott's got a question. Bob, when doing testing at a racetrack, would you suggest several short stints, 5 laps or so, or less stints with more laps? When I first actually go to a racetrack and test, we'll probably do a couple 10-lap runs just to get the driver kind of acclimated to the racetrack and kind of get a little more data so we can kind of get some ideas. Otherwise, if your driver's pretty consistent, 5 laps is going to tell you what you need to know. I mean, there's no reason to be out there burning everything up. I mean, if your driver's inconsistent, then you might want to think about going more laps and letting him try to get more consistent with the program. But I usually 5 laps, but like I said, I start with longer just because get the driver acclimated. Let's see here. What's the average starting point of how much the right rear should be compared to the left rear when building cars? what's the average starting point of how much the right rear should be in compared to the right front
We're
when
talking
building?
about the track. I'm assuming he's talking about the right rear and right front tires lined up to each other.
I always kind of go off of an inch and a quarter, inch and a half, inch and a quarter to start with, and then I kind of, and that's like with a 3-inch wheel with a 1/2-inch spacer on the rear, so I can adjust accordingly. Um, I always make sure my left sides are tracked in line. I string line the left sides, and my right side usually is an inch and a quarter to an inch and a half inside the right front.
Again, we talked about this, a week or so ago. Wheel spacers are your friend. Just because people talk about having a 1-inch wheel spacer doesn't mean they physically have a 1-inch thick wheel spacer all the time. They've got, 4/4 inch or a half and 2/4. They do that and tune that. And all these cars are different. Once you find that happy spot of where you like to be, now you're fine tuning, and those spacers are a big deal. Not just on the right rear, but on the right front, and for sure on the left rear, it'll change your car a lot. But you got to be careful there.
Okay, on a metric street stock, when putting 50 pounds of lead on the axle tube, should a guy stiffen the right rear spring to gain side bite back? Well, that might not do it, because stiffening the right rear spring is definitely going to help with side bite, but the problem is now we're actually dealing with the actual axle housing itself and not as much with the suspension. And so we're dealing with the load on the two tires. Stiffening the left rear would definitely help it. Once again, you're kind of putting a Band-Aid on another situation, but overall it probably would help. What's your guys' opinion?
I don't think you need to change the spring rate myself.
I wouldn't, because like I said, we're dealing with a different. We're actually dealing with the actual axle housing itself and not the suspension so much.
Springs are virtually out of the equation right there.
Exactly. I have a question on setting up a rear spring cup on an IMCA Sport Mod rear end. Would you prefer the spring straight up and down at ride height or straight up and down at racing height? I plan on using the Weir's lower spring cups with the 1-inch steel ring, and I'll be able to move it to the left or to the right depending on spring alignment. Well, if you're actually dealing with an IMCA car, the IMCA rules state those springs at static need to be straight up and down. We tried that, angling that spring to get it so that it was better, and they didn't seem to think our theory on it being better was the same. So they want it, so when they look at the car from the back as they're driving through the pits, they want everything to be straight up and down, so that there's no. And when that spring goes through a tremendous amount of angles the way it is. So starting straight up and down is probably your best bet. Okay, Jacob wants to know, is the Waffle House or the Steak and Shake a better choice after 2 a.m. on a feature win? God, I don't know. The Waffle House, that's a tough one, man. I'd lean towards the Waffle House myself, but I'm kind of a waffle guy. I mean, Steak and Shake's probably pretty good too. I'd flip the coin, to be honest with you.
I'm going to say the ending comment there is after a feature win. It doesn't matter. They're both good. If he wouldn't have put that, now we got a different argument. But
yeah, I mean, you won, so go eat any place. What the heck?
Yep.
Pizza joint's good too, man. Jacob or Mike's great school last week was worth the trip from California. Well, thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. It was nice to get to talk to you, and your questions were great, and you were a great addition to the class. Taylor, can you explain the effect on moving the pull bar side to side on both the front and the rear of a sport mod? Well, wherever you move the pull bar, keep in mind wherever we put that, whatever tire we move it towards is the tire that's going to be influenced. So in other words, if we move it to the right of center, the car is going to have more side bite. Car is going to be a little tighter getting into the corner and could be a little freer off the corner. Just depends on the track conditions, but I usually actually try to put it dead center of the rear end so it doesn't do that. Moving it to the left is going to give you a little more traction off the corner, but you're going to lose side bite getting into the corner to the point where it might make it free enough through phase 1 and phase 2 of the corner that what you thought you would gain off the corner, you actually lost your overall lap time speed, actually slowed down because you lost in phase 1 and phase 2. Jacob thinks Steak and Shake would be the best, and that's from Mike, our good buddy Mike. I haven't talked to Mike Harrison in quite some time. I talked to him a while there. He was going to run a car that we had done some work on. Anyway, Earl, spacing the right front out, what's that going to do to handling? Well, it's going to do a couple things. It's going to make the front end more stable, and it's going to soften your wheel rate, which your wheel rate means like it's going to feel like you put a softer spring in there, and you're going to get a little bit more movement. So, it just kind of all depends on what you like as a driver. There's some guys like the front end to be a little more penny on the right front. In my opinion, I like the idea of moving it out sometimes because it just makes the car so much more stable getting into the corner and easier to drive. Have you had any experience with that? Kurt?
Yeah, I'm on the same page. I definitely like spacing that right front out when it gets slick. It's an easy, quick thing to do to make the car think it's on a softer spring, and it can help you for sure.
Yeah, I would totally agree. Is that our last question, Chad?
Looks like it.
That's kind of what it looks like here. Well, it's been a great night tonight. Thanks, Kurt, for coming on board, and I really enjoyed last week's class with you guys. I thought it was an excellent class. I had a good group of class attendees, and you're doing it with Ben and Joel. That was a lot of fun. So. We did have one more question. Northern Sportmont, thinking of moving the rear end side of the Panhard bar closer to the center, currently in the middle of the axle tube. Well, anytime you can put something in the center of both wheels, it's going to affect both wheels equally or somewhat equally. So I think that's a good idea. I highly recommend that. Earl says about a 1-inch spacer. Kind of depends, half-inch spacer, 1-inch spacer. Just all depends on what you want to try.
Sometimes a quarter of an inch is plenty.
Quarter of an inch is a noticeable difference. People don't believe that. You tell somebody, I just put a 1/4-inch spacer on that right rear, and they're like, "Are you kidding me?" And believe me, a 1/4 of an inch is like a 1/4 of a mile at some point in time. Dirk, the old man 7 garage said that he had parked by you at Fayette last year and both pulled out of the 50-lap marathon.
I didn't call that a marathon. That the fun meter I think was pegged for both of us, and then we did the right thing by heading to the trailer. So,
all right. Well, thanks everybody for coming on board tonight. We had a lot of great questions, and thanks, Kurt. Thanks, Chad. Been another great night.
Yeah, thanks
everybody in 2 weeks.
Thanks for the invite.
2 weeks would be the 28th of March. So let's plan on, we'll get together and once again, had a great time.
Okay, thanks everybody.